My dad gave me a trip to India with him for my 18th birthday, but my envious stepmother and her daughter burned my passport the day before we were supposed to fly out. My dad is furious. Hey, I turned 18 a couple of days ago, and I was supposed to go on my first international trip to India. This was supposed to be a really special trip for a lot of reasons. My mom died when I was 6, and to cope with the loss, my dad and I would constantly watch Indian movies. They were bright, fun, and always cheered me up. That's how I got into Indian culture. My mom loved Indian movies too. She had a lot of Indian clothes, even though she'd never been there herself and only knew India from the movies. My dad promised us back when Mom was alive that one day we'd all go to India together and have a great time. Unfortunately, my mom died in her sleep from a brain aneurysm before my dad could save up enough money to take us from Illinois to India. My parents were in their early 30s then, and it was really hard for us to deal with such a loss. My mom was only 32 when she died, and nobody expected it. My parents were each other's first and only, so it was really hard for my dad too. It was a tough time for everyone, and the only thing that helped me feel better was watching movies with my dad. It became a kind of ritual for us. We'd make sure to watch one movie from my mom's collection at least once a week, and we'd spend that time together to stay connected. That's how my dad and I became especially close, and we've had a warm relationship ever since. I'm sure my mom would be proud of us. When we see her again one day, she'll definitely be happy with how things turned out. Except for a couple of things, but overall, I think she'll be happy with how we've handled her loss. So you could say that India has always held a special place in my heart and in my dad's heart. And we both dreamed of going there and learning more about this beautiful culture. But we either didn't have the money or the time. My dad worked a lot. At one point, I had almost given up hope that it would ever happen. But then on my 18th birthday, when my dad told me that we were finally going to make our dream come true, I was ecstatic. I was literally jumping for joy. And the best part is, my stepmother and stepsister aren't coming with us on this trip. To clarify, they're not coming not because I didn't want them to, but because they would have had to miss a lot of important events if they had decided to join. For example, my stepsister, Ashley, who is 17, had her final exams during the trip. And my stepmom, Susan, had a very important project at work that she had been working on for a long time, so she probably couldn't have gone anyway. I have a strong feeling that my dad planned the trip for this specific time so we could go alone. Because I don't get along very well with my stepmom and Ashley, but if I ask my dad directly, he'll never admit it, so I'll just leave it as a theory. Anyway, my dad told me about the trip on the evening of my birthday right at the party in front of all my friends, and everyone was genuinely happy for me, except for those two. Of course, you could see on their faces how much it bothered them that my dad had arranged such a surprise for me. An international trip for my 18th birthday. When the party was over and the guests had left, I heard my dad arguing with my stepmom. I knew for sure that she was arguing with him about the surprise. Although I couldn't make out all the words, it was clear that she thought the vacation should have been postponed so we could go as a whole family. I'm glad that didn't happen because it would have been a real problem for me for several reasons. First, because I don't get along with my stepmom and her daughter, and second, because they're generally difficult to be around, especially on vacation. We've gone on a couple of trips together, and they are not the kind of people you want to spend a vacation with. So I really didn't want them to come with us. I've already explained why this trip was emotionally important to me, and I wouldn't have wanted it to be ruined by their presence. That's why I was so glad they weren't coming.
My dad also had perfectly valid reasons for not taking them. He didn't want his wife to miss important work. And Ashley couldn't go anyway because she had exams, and her high school graduation was in a couple of weeks. Susan and Ashley came into my life about 5 years ago, and at first, we all had a pretty normal relationship. They were both quite pleasant, and while my dad was just dating Susan, they didn't seem to have anything against me. But then they got married 2 years ago, and everything changed abruptly for no reason. I know for a fact that nothing changed on my end, so I have no idea why they suddenly started acting that way. After the wedding, they both started this weird thing towards me, and our relationship gradually began to deteriorate. Okay, I wasn't particularly close to them before, but at least the relationship was neutral and polite. But then Susan started treating me like, and Ashley started copying her mother's behavior. They spoke to me rudely and were intentionally as mean as possible. This all happened when my dad wasn't around, and as soon as he entered the room, they became sweet again. It was very strange, and I realized I had to talk to my dad about it. So I did. Then we had a family meeting where we were supposed to discuss these problems. At first, they denied everything, but luckily, I had a recording of a conversation that had happened a couple of days earlier where they were being awful to me, so they couldn't lie anymore. Then they had to confess, and they resorted to manipulation. Susan and Ashley started crying and telling my dad that they just felt like I still hadn't accepted them as family, even after the wedding, which was complete nonsense. I really did consider them family, it's just that they were the ones who treated me like crap. And after that, they still expected me to treat them well, even though they didn't show me the slightest bit of respect. My dad was very confused because Susan was the first woman he really liked after my mom, and I understood that he didn't want to just give up on the relationship. He asked us all to try to communicate better. I decided that for my dad's sake, I would try to control myself, despite how they had behaved at that family meeting. After that, their behavior changed again because they had already been exposed, and now instead of pretending to be nice in front of my dad and being rude to me behind his back, they just chose a different path and stopped talking to me altogether. When my dad wasn't around, they acted as if I didn't exist. To be honest, I was fine with that. At least they didn't bother me, so I was even happy with that arrangement. For my dad's sake, we put on a play called The Happy Family, and it had been like that for a whole year. I don't understand why they started acting that way in the first place. I didn't do anything that could have provoked them to behave like that. Well, I guess they're just, and what they did recently only confirms my point of view. The day after my 18th birthday, so 3 days ago, my dad and I were having breakfast, and I pulled him aside to talk about what I had overheard the night before. I asked him if it was true that Susan and Ashley were angry about not going to India with us. He said that yes, they were pretty upset, but he knew how important this trip was to me, and he understood that we didn't have the best relationship, even if we tried to pretend in front of him. That's why he wanted it to be something special and just for the two of us. Plus, it was also around the anniversary of my mom's death, so everything fit perfectly, and he wanted to spend this time with me. He was going to calm Susan and Ashley down later, but for now, we were supposed to just think about the trip. As I've said, after a few vacations with Susan and Ashley, I realized that it's just unbearable to vacation with them. My dad and I are explorers. We constantly need to go somewhere, see things, explore, and enjoy every moment in a new place. But they prefer to sit in the hotel and do nothing. If we were even a little bit late, they would start calling nonstop and make us come back for dinner, even if we wanted to wander around longer. And for us, there should be no rules on vacation. Only freedom, adventure, immersion in the culture and atmosphere of a new place. They don't understand that. India was supposed to be something special for us. We didn't want them to come with us and ruin everything with their restrictions. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because if it comes to that, Susan and Ashley also had separate short trips over the past couple of years, and they didn't take my dad and me with them, so they have no reason to be angry. The only difference was that when Susan and Ashley went somewhere together, it was always to nearby places, and they were gone for 2 or 3 days at most, while my dad and I were going to India for 10 whole days. Maybe that was the main difference, but other than that, I thought we were being perfectly fair. When my dad told me not to worry and promised that he would deal with Susan and Ashley after we got back from our vacation, I was on cloud 9. I was really looking forward to this trip, and for the last 2 days, I tried not to get distracted or upset about anything because I was going to India. I started packing. Yesterday, everything was packed, and today we were supposed to fly out, but unfortunately, now I doubt that's even possible because not dealing with Susan and Ashley led to them just burning my passport. Yes, you heard that right. I'm not kidding at all. They literally burned my passport, and we found out just a couple of hours ago. It's 2 a.m. now, and around 6 p.m., I was rummaging through my documents to put everything together and not have to look in different bags. I kept my passport in my purse, and when I started double-checking the contents to make sure everything was there, I realized it was gone. I searched the whole house, turned everything upside down looking for the passport, and after 45 minutes of searching, it became clear that it was nowhere to be found, and I started to really panic. And at that moment, Susan and Ashley came into my room and asked in this sickeningly sweet tone if I had lost something. Although I immediately suspected that something was wrong with their voices, I couldn't refuse their help. I said that I had lost my passport and couldn't find it anywhere, even though I had already searched the whole house. I asked if they knew where it was. Susan threw a half-burned and completely ruined passport on my bed and asked, "Were you looking for this?"
I was in shock, just stunned. I didn't even know how to react. Most of the passport was burned, and it was clear that it wouldn't be accepted at passport control. So basically, I no longer have a passport. They looked so pleased when they saw my stunned expression. I think I was just paralyzed for a few minutes. When I realized what had happened, I immediately decided that I wouldn't give them the pleasure of seeing me cry. I put the passport aside, stood up silently, closed the door right in their faces, locked myself in my room, and only then did I burst into tears. My dad was at the store at that moment buying some clothes for the hot weather. I immediately texted him to come home urgently, and in the message itself, I described what had happened so I wouldn't have to explain everything in words later. I even attached a photo of the burned passport. Soon he was home. I didn't leave my room and didn't open the door, just gave him the opportunity to sort it out himself. I knew he was home as soon as I heard him yelling. He started screaming at Susan and Ashley right from the doorstep, called them psychopaths, and ordered them to get out of the house because he wouldn't let them treat his daughter like that. He said he had already made a mistake once when he ignored the first incident, the one I told you about when they were being awful to me, and he wasn't going to repeat that mistake just because he once loved Susan. I heard Susan and Ashley putting on a crying act downstairs and trying to feed him some nonsense about the passport supposedly burning because I left it on the dresser next to a cigarette I forgot to put out, and that's how it caught fire. It was the stupidest lie. And at that moment, I decided I had to intervene and went downstairs to put them in their place. My dad knows perfectly well that I don't even smoke, so it was all complete bullshit. When I came out, he said I was just in time because he was about to do something to even the score. I thought he was going to call the police, but he did something much cooler. I didn't understand what he was getting at then, but he went into his office and came back with some papers. I had no idea what they were, but I could tell from Ashley's face that it was something important. A minute later, my dad tore up the documents right in front of Susan's face. It was only later that I found out they were student loan papers that my dad was going to help Ashley with. She needed to take out a loan to pay for college because her mother hadn't saved any money for her. She had already started applying, but the money situation was still up in the air. My dad wanted to help her by co-signing with Susan because he was better off financially than she was. Since they burned my passport, it was only fair that Ashley lost something important too. After my dad tore up those documents, he ordered Susan and Ashley to get out of the house. They tried to argue, begged him to change his mind, almost on their knees, but he was adamant and made it clear that he was not going to change his decision. An hour later, they were gone, but now they're begging me, flooding me with messages. And for several hours now since they left, especially Ashley, she's been begging me and writing that she's willing to do anything to make up for it. The main thing is that I talk to my dad and convince him to co-sign again so she can get a student loan. Because with my dad, she said, it would be easier to pay it back than with Susan. And they swear they didn't know he was going to do that. They say they're really sorry. They were just hurt that my dad didn't even think to take them with him, and they felt like outsiders in the family. I decided to reply to that message and reminded them that they too, as a mother and daughter, had gone on vacation together many times. So why is it unfair if I want to spend my 18th birthday alone with my father? Especially since Ashley has a biological father. And even though he lives in another state and doesn't have custody, he still sees him at least a couple of times a month. But my mom died many years ago, and my dad and I just wanted to make this trip in her honor. And they wouldn't even let me have that. So demanding my help now is incredibly unfair, because what they did to me was vile, but what happened to Ashley in the end is absolutely fair. And now she has lost all right to ask me for anything, even forgiveness. But Ashley keeps writing, begging. I've already tried to block her, but something is still stopping me. Probably because maybe it really wasn't very fair to arrange such a trip just for the two of us, without thinking about Ashley or Susan. They usually only go away for 2 or 3 days and not far, while we were going to India for 10 whole days. That is a long time. So here I am asking, am I the bad guy for wanting to go on a 10-day international trip with my father without my stepmother and stepsister?
Well, before we continue, I suggest you write your answer to the author's question in the comments right now. Personally, I think it's a no-brainer. The situation is quite clear-cut and the author is not at fault in any way. She did absolutely the right thing. And Ashley and Susan, of course, are just plain awful people, of whom there are a great many in the world. And of course, I understand the reasons for Ashley and Susan's behavior, but nevertheless, that doesn't excuse them one bit, but rather only aggravates the whole situation. Awful behavior, awful upbringing. There's nothing more to add. But it's a great pity, nevertheless, for the father to be in such a situation. When you love a woman, it would seem that she is completely suitable for you in most aspects, but she allows herself to do this? But since she allows herself to do this, then in principle, I think she could have allowed herself to do something bad in other aspects as well. So it's good that he's breaking up with her. And now let's find out what happened next.
Update 1. Hey. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to clarify a couple of things first. First of all, we didn't call the cops when I found out they destroyed my passport because we didn't want to turn it into a legal battle. At that moment, it just didn't seem necessary. And to be honest, it didn't even cross my mind. I was in complete shock and panic. Even if I had called the police, it's unlikely that anything would have happened, because it would have taken a lot of time to prove that they burnt the passport on purpose. They would have written it off as an accident, and for them, that would have been the end of the story. So why would I have wasted my time on that? Secondly, many people have asked why I'm not in college yet. Well, I graduated from high school last year, and then I decided to take a gap year to figure myself out and my life. During this year, I worked at several places, and I already have some experience in the field I want to go into, which is journalism. I've interned at different publications and have a general idea of how things work. Now I've already started applying to colleges, and Ashley and I were supposed to start at the same time. Fortunately, my grandparents will pay for my entire education, so my dad doesn't have to worry about it, and neither do I. For Ashley, unfortunately, it's a different story. That's why my dad was going to help her with a student loan by co-signing. He knew that Susan was a nervous wreck about it. Her biological father refused to help. He thinks that Ashley should pay for herself. But Susan, on the contrary, is sure that her daughter needs support, because college is already stressful, and then there's the money. Anyway, it was their problem. I didn't interfere. I only found out about it a couple of days ago when I talked to my dad, and he told me what documents he had torn up in front of Ashley. Now, as of today, I was supposed to be flying to India, but since I no longer have a passport, that's impossible. So my dad and I stayed home and watched old movies that we used to love all day to cheer ourselves up a bit. And honestly, it's helping. I also blocked Ashley and Susan because I don't feel sorry for them at all. You were right. I was wrong to blame myself. I think a lot of it was because I missed my mom and was in a very emotional state. I guess I just got too sentimental. I blocked them, and now they can beg all they want. It won't help them. They set me up for no reason, so everything that's happening to them now, they absolutely deserve.
Update 2. Hey, it's been 4 days since my last post, and today my dad came home from work and told me he had filed for divorce. After that, he and I had a conversation that, frankly, should have happened a long time ago. That family meeting where we sat down and discussed how Ashley and Susan's behavior had changed after Susan married my dad turned out to be pointless because nothing changed after that. Instead of changing their behavior, they just stopped talking to me altogether. And that's not how a family should behave. My dad sat me down and said that he had been selfish for a long time and only thought about himself. But now he realized that all of this was harmful to both of us and that he would be better off without this woman. Obviously, she wasn't the person he was supposed to be with. Maybe he was in love with her, but she didn't love him enough to accept me and at least just behave like a human being. He admitted that he had suspected it, The reason she didn't accept me was that she could never see me as part of the family, and most likely she felt that for my dad, I would always come first, and she and Ashley could never replace me. Perhaps that's why Susan felt jealous and insecure towards me. My father will probably never know the exact reason why their behavior changed. After all, they used to be kind to me, but after the wedding, it was like they were replaced. My dad tried to turn a blind eye to it because he thought it wasn't really bothering anyone, but now he's had enough because the damage has already been done. He's not going to pretend that we have a happy family anymore, and no one has to pretend anymore. Not them, not us. We are not a happy family. Period. That is the reality, and my dad is finally ready to accept it. So that same day, after talking to his lawyer, he filed for divorce, and now the divorce proceedings are about to begin. He apologized to me for everything I had to go through because of him, and we just hugged. Some might think that he's not a very good father in principle, but for me, he will always be the best. Yes, maybe he did some things wrong. Yes, sometimes he only thought about himself, but I will forgive him for all of that, because for every mistake he made, there were dozens of times more things he did right. And I don't think I could have wished for a better father. I love him and will always love him.
Update 3. It looks like Susan was officially served with the divorce papers today. My dad came home from work earlier than usual and has been locked in his office ever since. I can hear him yelling at someone periodically. I don't quite understand what's happening, but when he comes out, I'll be sure to ask. He hasn't even spoken to me since he got home. And honestly, I'm worried about what will happen next. But I know he'll get through it. It's been 5 days since he filed for divorce, and I'm just assuming that she was served the papers today because otherwise I can't explain his behavior. Since I blocked Susan and Ashley, we haven't had any more contact, and they haven't tried to reach out to me in any other way. They're lucky because if they had tried, I would have had a few things to say to them. I'm still incredibly angry about everything that happened. Oh well, I guess we'll just go to India another time. Now it will definitely be after the divorce. And since I'm starting college in a couple of months, I don't even know when we'll have enough time for such a trip again. I really hope it will happen one day.
Update 4. Hey, it's pretty late right now, but a couple of hours ago, my dad finally came out of his office and told me why he was yelling on the phone. It turns out that Susan called him and started threatening him. Like, if he tried to divorce her, she would go on the attack with a bunch of lies and accusations and would say anything about him just so he would lose everything he had worked so hard for. He came home from work early because he didn't want to deal with this problem right at the office. He was yelling because he had been arguing with her on the phone for a long time. The first time she called, he was still at work, and she caught him off guard, so he didn't react quickly enough and couldn't record her threats. But when he got home, he was ready and recorded everything she said. Then he told her straight up that if she tried to ruin our lives, he would use this recording against her. Susan immediately turned everything upside down and accused him of trying to blackmail her. Just a crazy circus. But in the end, my dad made it clear to her that if she lied about him or tried to slander him during the divorce proceedings, he would do everything to completely destroy her life. He's not entirely sure what will happen next, but he says he could tell from her voice that Susan was scared. So we can consider this a victory. He said that the divorce proceedings will start soon, and as soon as everything is finalized, he and I will fly to India, he promised me. Right now, I just hope that everything goes smoothly and Susan doesn't cause us any extra problems. She knows that it's a losing battle from the start. After all, I still have proof of how she and her crazy daughter burned my passport, so if they try to cross the line, it will end badly for them. In short, now it's really begun.
Update 5. Hey, this is going to be a very short update because I'm super busy right now. I wanted to let you know that a couple of weeks ago, the divorce was finally finalized, and my dad just hit the jackpot. Susan is not getting anything from him, and that's how it should be.
We each keep our own things, and the same goes for Susan. No one lost or gained anything, although she tried to milk my father for as much as possible, both as a settlement and in the form of alimony and even child support, as if that could even work. In short, the divorce is finalized, and my dad and I have already started preparing for our trip to India. It's definitely happening now. I already have a new passport, and I'm just incredibly excited. I'm just really happy right now and wanted to share that with you. Thank you so much for all the comments and support. Well, that's the end of the story. I'd like to know your opinion. Also, was the father at fault in the end or not? What do you think? After that family meeting, should the father have realized that nothing had changed and kicked his wife out sooner? Or did he do the right thing by giving her a chance? It's just that, of course, on the one hand, it's easy to blame the father and say that, yes, he's completely at fault. But on the other hand, I completely understand his difficult choice. Well, the guy didn't want to fully face reality, especially considering that he had already lost his first wife. And here is this new girl that he liked so much. But in essence, I believe that he is still to blame, although he can be understood completely. And thank you for watching this video to the end. Watch our previous videos, which you will see here. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if for some reason you haven't already, and good luck to you!